I have D, just so you know, Richard, our other guest, was supposed to be on in the first hour. He popped in. I think we miscommunicated, but his last name is Ojeda. I'm just saying, spelled the exact same way. And I would be.
I was all excited at first. I was like, "You're kidding me!"
If the Major, Major, hop on with us real quick and say hello.
Back on the beat, and here is the mega worldwide radio program with Hal Sparks.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We got Dee Snider still with us, and Richard Ojeda from No Dem Left Behind is also joining us as well. And I am so happy to make this introduction because, Richard, first of all, as always, thank you for your service. It's the same thing I say to Dee, actually, in a lot of ways. But you share a last name with one of Dee's original bandmates of Twisted Sister.
Yes. And
that was an exciting point for you, Richard Ojeda from No Dem. Yeah,
yes.
That's right.
It absolutely was. That's awesome. Dee Snider. Holy
yes.
smokes. Yes. Yes.
Hey,
I
brother.
love you, man.
This for the record, we're and I don't know, Dee, if you're aware, but Richard has his own podcast, and he shows up. He does Stuttering John's. That's how we were introduced. He does Stuttering John's podcast sometimes, and he has an organization called No Dem Left Behind. And the idea is behind it is sort of, it's a grassroots coalition of Democrat support for people in red and purple districts who are normally going to get the funding. And so they create this situation where you're like, don't be afraid to go into these states where allegedly you're not welcome and make your point, stand up for what you believe in. I'm just saying there might be a new theme song for the organization on the new D record.
Good. Wait to hear my new record. I've got a song on there called Stand, which is literally stand for something, just and really, with Hal, with song-wise, and it sometimes shoots me in the face like Daffy Duck. I think it's important that you leave it a little bit open for interpretation. So the word has been used and exploited both and women's premenopausal medication, so, and that's, so stand isn't telling people what to stand for. I'm just trying to tell people, just freaking stand up and be damn it.
Let me say something here. Let me say something here. In 2017, I was a state senator in West Virginia, and it was my speech that lit the match on the teacher strike. But I'm going to tell you this. There was nothing more, hit you in the chest. When I was in the Senate chambers with the doors locked, we had 28,000 teachers standing outside in the hallways, and they were singing, "We're not going to take it." It was freaking phenomenal.
Yeah, the teachers strike in and of itself. Exactly. And there should be that interpretation aspect of it. Your music should be, within reason. Obviously, the QAnon folks are in a case all their own, and they seem to be. They seem to be like their superpower seems to be misunderstanding normal things. Yeah. You know what I mean? Taking normal things and
let me tell you, the only time I object, the first line of "we're not going to take it" is "we've got the right to choose."
Yes.
Now, I think that's pretty on the nose. There's nothing metaphorical about that line. I was being very deliberate with those words. Pro-choice.
Yeah.
So these organizations who are anti-pro-choice, I simply reach out to them and say, "Do you know the words?"
Right.
And like, "What? Well, we're not going to take it." I said, "No, the first line, we got the right to choose." Oh my God. And they stop using it immediately.
Yeah.
So if you don't stand for freedom of choice, I've got a problem with that. But otherwise, it's a song for everybody.
Technically speaking, if you don't stand for freedom of choice, you kind of don't stand for freedom. Yeah. I mean, if there is a function of freedom, it's sort of the ability to make a decision on your own.
It's kind of an overqualification.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. It's a little, being pro-choice and is pro-freedom at its root. I've always been confused by their use of the flag. Now, this is. And by the way, I know Richard's still just fanboying. We got all ours out of the,
Hey, Richard.
For yourself, I've still got some in the chamber.
I'll do your show, man. I'll love to come on your podcast.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
So
Airborne.
Yeah.
And Johnny still got some in the chamber for that as well. When you're talking about, Richard as being as a state senator, helping to lead this, and Dee making this choice to go in front of Congress or to be open about your political beliefs, because I know some people art-wise like to remove it for the sake of that interpretation. But then there's some people, where you just can't. You can't listen to some people's lyrics and go, you can't listen to a Queensryche record like Empire and go, I don't know where they stand politically. I don't know what their concerns are. Like literally in the song Empire, he's singing the budget allocation for education and law enforcement in the song. There's literally, instead of a soul. Yeah. So that choice to, and since we're talking about choice in that regard, to stand out there, I think, what would you say to people who are afraid of making that choice, of standing, literally to motivate them to feel free to be themselves fully? That, what would be your advice on that? Whether it's baby steps or the reality, how do you, because I think you guys both, and I certainly do, and I know Johnny does, you look at the world slightly differently. I think we all share one thing, in that we feel like we belong in the world in a way that maybe we don't sometimes. You know what I mean? In spite of the wall put up by people, as in, you feel like an outsider who's just destined to be in that regard. And maybe it's how we were in high school. Maybe it's just you weren't always an outsider. But what's your advice to people who want to, who feel all these things, but are a little afraid to make that stand? First, and then
wow.
Richard.
That's really a tough one, but certainly it's the Dr. Phil repeated quote. How's it work? How's that working out for you?
Right.
Sitting back and letting the things just happen. How's that working for you? You're
right.
Happy with how you feel, and when you realize that you're not, that's the first thing you say. And there are ways to stick your toe in the water and get involved without being a screaming lunatic like I can be sometimes. But just get behind people like me and Richard and Hal and people who are voices and support us in what we're doing and what we're saying in a simple, what he said.
Yeah, right.
That goes a long way. A retweet, a like, a sharing of something, of a message. You don't have to be standing on the soapbox yourself, but you can at least cheer those on who are standing on that soapbox.
Right. There's a power in audience. It's that we do vote with our dollars these days. Like I often make a point of, I have a lot of music tastes, but in my life, there's music I have and music that I buy and music that I own. And there's certain music that I own. I'll buy 3 different versions of a certain record. Like I have, the digital cassette and LP version of most, if not all, I think, all of your stuff, D. All, I'm pretty sure all. Because I don't think I have an LP of Widowmaker. I have a CD of it, but I don't know that you ever did a vinyl release that I'm aware of.
We did.
Yeah, because if it was, I'd have it.
I'm hoping to do something with that, by the way. So stand by.
Absolutely. And so, Richard, what would you say to people who are like, because you chose to serve. That is a life choice of putting yourself, on the vanguard of a circumstance or whatever. And that's a mental space that you occupy, maybe naturally, maybe not. Did you talk yourself into it? No. Yeah.
No, when I was, I spent 24 years in the military, and to be honest with you, all I cared about was who promises to give me the most beans and the bullets so that I can accomplish my, this nation's mission of winning this nation's wars. When I retired from the military and I come home, I started paying more attention to local politics. And that's when I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And that's where I was almost murdered. I took a pipe to the back of the head and 8 broken bones in my face with brass knuckles because I stood up to these friggin' jackaloons. But I tell people all the time, ignorance is bliss, but you've got to follow politics. More people have got to stand up and start following politics, because once you realize what's really going on behind the scenes, you can't sit silent, because this deals with the future of your children. And we need more people to pay more attention and stop falling for this garbage that we see that gets basically fed to these people on a national scale. I mean, this QAnon stuff alone tells you how some of these people will fall for anything. But people have got to start getting involved, because if we don't, they are going to continue to win. And I'm telling you, once they get, like West Virginia, they have a super majority. They are going after education in our state so bad, to where I will tell you, public schools are going to have nothing. They're going to be completely gutted. And why? Because people don't pay attention to politics, and all they care about is the guy that knocks on their door that says, God, gays, and guns, and they friggin' elect them without knowing anything about them. And it's a shame.
Right.
We got to be more educated on politics.
Well, and that's, I'm glad you bring that up too, because I have to say, D2, the number of songs that you deal with, like, that have to deal with hypocrisy as a major, like, that's what drives me more than anything. Like, I don't care if somebody lives a lifestyle or has a belief system that's different from mine necessarily. I feel like I can talk to them, and that it's the hypocrisy that makes me angry. The Ted Cruz stuff that happened this week. I know you guys saw that as it was happening, and it's brutal, not in just his disregard for his own constituency, but the blatant hypocrisy and the lie he's been putting, and the fact that he would call other people out for years and then do something like this without any regard for the ramifications of it is in and of itself just extraordinary. And it's enraging. So, D, in that, in those terms, what's the thing that makes you the most aggravated? But is it, in terms of when you see something politically where you're like, that's something I have to jump on?
Wow. What Richard is saying is absolutely, absolutely true. People aren't paying attention to what's going on. They're watching it's what the magician has. He has something trying to distract you from what's actually going on. Right. And there's a lot of distraction out there. And a lot of politicians, they really play off of that. I think they really work the fact that we're paying attention. We're looking over here. I mean, Trump did. He loved just like when he was operating, doing his thing. He had this craziness that just kept people focused on the craziness and not the corruption that was going on. And people were missing. There'd be misdirection. That's the word. Yes. And what Richard is saying is that we gotta pay attention to what's going on. It's beyond guns, gays, and God. They're using that to misdirect you, to distract you, and while other things are happening behind your back.
Yeah. Look at during the time when, you bring up those things like guns, guts, and God were become this, this rallying cry, of the right. That was when credit default swaps were happening. That's when the lead up, the biggest cries about that stuff, the culture war aspect of it for almost 15 years was in direct lead up while the credit default swap damage was happening that eventually led to the 2008 crash, which caused, obliterated wealth for a lot of middle-class people, just, sent a lot of people into poverty, destroyed households, lives ended. And it was all during this time where they were selling this whole thing that Democrats are going to come for your guns. And that's the only thing you have to worry about, is that the idea that they're going to want that. And the real damage was coming from another front. It was a misdirection. It was the inflated tanks before D-Day. It was a whole field full of air, tank balloons, so that the Luftwaffe would think the tanks were coming from another direction. And that is the current Republican methodology, it seems. Go ahead, Richard.
But you got to also understand that, they're doing that now, and they redo this every so often. But, for 8 years, we listened to these people attack President Obama for everything, from a daggone tan suit to golfing. But then the moment that Donald Trump takes over, they're completely silent on the fact that he's golfing, and he's actually making a fortune from his golfing. Yeah. I mean, Trump got a pass. And that's one of the things people got to understand. If all you do is get your news from one source, which is Fox News, then you're going to continue pushing the same bullshit that they
hold on. Oh, now we've got dumped again. It happens. It's real radio. It's okay. 3, 2, 1, and we're back. It's okay. It keeps the guys in Chicago on their toes. I forgot to tell you, Richard, we're real radio, so we have to do all the FCC rules. We got to take, and we are going to take a break, by the way. We'll come back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, with no Dem Left Behind. I want to talk about that in the break, and then I want to talk about Dee's new and of course the fact that Johnny just sneezed into his elbow like a proper post-COVID behavior. Yes. Yeah, we'll be back right after this. Right. Do the Dracula, right? We'll be back right after this. Dee, I'm going to at some point I'm going to send you Johnny's solo instrumental guitar record, and you're going to want him to play on your record. I'm just saying it's going to happen. It's not. I'm not going to force you. It's just going to happen naturally. You're going to hear it, and you're going to go, oh yeah, okay,
Hal knows rock and roll, so I'll definitely check that out for sure.
Damn straight. So,
and by the way, I just want to at some point we get it in here, but also on the air as well, talking about the plant medicines. Sending people to thankyouplantmedicine.com for any direction they want or guidance or more information. It's a good source. People want to know more about the plant medicine.
It's almost as if I've been paying attention. I've got the website ready to pull up.
Very nice.
Along with this. See, I'm almost a pro at this now. Yeah.
Love to do your show, Richard. Hey, I love doing it. And, interestingly, I'm actually, I have voted Democrat, Independent. I was a McCain supporter before he brought Sarah Palin on board. I actually wrote in a motorcade at Sturgis. I'm just looking for rational human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or just trying to.
McCain was rational for a good while.
Yeah.
It's not just about being a Democrat. It's just about someone who wants it to work and get some. So fucking.
I just want to see leaders. I want to see real leaders again.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also, literally in terms of the Republican platform versus the Democratic platform, there are some essentials that, Republicans were always kind of a non-starter because of the Republic versus the Democratic voting style of it. They've left that behind anyways. And McCain at least was kind of an old school, he was not, we're really a Republic. You don't really vote for president. You vote for electors. The electors choose, that kind of stuff, which is the essence of the Republican Party. He was beyond that. He was a modern
20 seconds.
Okay, thank you. He was a modern Republican who just, believed you should get the most votes and show that you can lead the country and come up with tax policy that benefits the most people in the best way, blah, blah, blah. Like it used to be really.
To the other side.
Yeah.
It's all to the other side of the aisle. Biden and him had a long relationship, and they worked together,
Yeah, not like Lindsey Graham. Good Lord.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending. Yay!
So we always have a happy ending on the show as best we can. It's been tough over the last year. It really, really has. But today of all days, having Richard on with us and having Dee on with us and me and Johnny Million, it's the culmination of a lot of work and I want to, before we get into our, we get caught up in the next conversation about it, I do want to bring up that there's a site called Thank You Plant Medicine that Dee wanted people to look into, especially when, in terms of the conversation we were having earlier. It's
questions, you want guidance and want to know more.
Yeah, it's thankyouplantmedicine.com. And the hashtag is Thank You Plant Medicine. Now, there's a lot of plant medicines, by the way. Obviously, the higher end psychotropics are gonna get the most news because if it makes the walls bleed, it leads. I suppose. But there, everybody who drinks tea to settle their stomach, or like lemon verbena tea or like lemon honey tea for your throat, like those kind of things, that's plant medicine too in its own way. It's just on a different scale. And at certain points, what we need to do, and this is the most crucial part of this, and I can't stress this enough, is we need to start pushing for science to look fearlessly into these things, where the government is not going to shut you down if you do real genuine clinical study of the benefits of plant medicine, acupuncture, massage, acupressure, whatever, all the organic medicines that have shown up in different societies for thousands of years and have had, have a giant, list of people who've had efficacy and not had efficacy. And you check them for a placebo and a nocebo effect, and you do the real science. That's what I believed was necessary about the legalization of pot. And I think there is a value in looking into these things and going, you know what? There's actually a lot of great stuff about it. If we could just remove the part that makes you think that your landlord from college is outside your door with 1,000 teeth in his head and a hatchet for arms, like if we can eliminate that part of it, maybe, just maybe. So I'm going to post that again for everybody to look at. Thank you, plantmedicine.com. And I want to thank Dee for bringing that up. And then Richard, go ahead. Yeah,
I just want to say real quick, one of the things, my bill was what made West Virginia the 29th state to become legal for medical cannabis. And it was such a hard fight because the truth is that, people, Big Pharma is controlling everything, and Big Pharma doesn't want anything to pass without them having their hands in the money. So, this is one of the things where
they're controlling the scientists too.
Right.
Exactly. Well, when you know that something works, you've got to let your legislators know that so that they push for that. Because if not, Big Pharma will shut it down. And
which is exactly how medical cannabis ultimately got passed. It's ultimately that's how the conversation started. It was becoming an overt aspect where there were so many people who were using it for pain mediation and all kinds of other stuff who didn't have insurance, by the way. The irony is that the Republicans fighting against things like the ACA eventually led to the fact that people were self-medicating with other things, and there was enough allegorical evidence, that led them to eventually having to look into it. And a similar thing will happen with a lot of these things. And like I said, literally, Bayer aspirin was behind the first major use of syndicated opioid use in the United States and the creation of heroin and other painkillers. And while we're synthesizing OxyContin and oxycodone and pretending that they don't come from opium and saying that they have mined opium for other benefits and have used it willy-nilly, the idea that you can't look into these other things and have scientific studies for their benefits and eliminate any of the fantastical aspects of it and focus on what's repeatable, what's reusable, what's safe is ridiculous. And I think the next big movement should be to push science to have the freedom, the choice. We've got the right to choose it, one would even say. Right. In that regard. So I think that's fantastic. And then of course I want to mention No Democrat Left Behind. No Dem Left Behind, that movement, and Richard, the benefit of not being afraid to go into red districts. The statement here is rural Democrats. We do exist. It's amazing that has to be like the lead, feed on that. But what would you say to somebody who's thinking about running for office and they're like, well, I'm in a red state. It's really not going to change. I'm not going to have any support.
Well, ultimately, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach out to these red rural districts, and we're asking the people that live there, do you know somebody that could be a candidate that the people could get behind, that we can finally get rid of some of these friggin' red seats? We could flip these red seats blue. It's not easy, but I'm telling you right now, there are amazing candidates out there. We had a candidate by the name of Lindsey Simmons in Missouri who absolutely was a Harvard grad, who was phenomenal when it comes to speaking to folks. Her husband was a helicopter pilot deployed with a bounty on his head, and she didn't win, but she did a phenomenal job and broke literally records across the state. So, and you know what? We may not be successful this race, but now everybody in the state knows exactly who she is and are now more likely to lean towards her if she runs again. And we sure are hoping that she runs again.
That's great. Dee, I since we've only got like 3 minutes left in the show, I want you to describe what was it like, and people should watch the documentary We Are Twisted Sister, by the way, but summarize just in line with what Richard was saying, what you had to go through as a band when you were first starting out before you got a record deal. How many tries did you have to make? What was that process like?
Well, and as I said, I will tell you an attack on Richard too. You build off of the energy of what that woman did in that state. She may not have won the election, but that the people start building off that energy. It's good. We formed the band formed in '73. Didn't make it officially until '84.
Right.
I joined in '76. I remember having 5 go-rounds with record labels, 5 demo tapes, 5 pushes, 5, and being rejected by every single record company in the United States 5 times. And finally going to England, like Hendrix did, like the Stray Cats did, like Joan Jett did, to get signed to an indie label there. And then when we broke in England, coming back to the States, and I remember when we came back to the States to perform, people would meet me and say, "Where's your English accent?" And
right.
We know about from New York. They said, "Well, we read about you. We got the record out of England. We read about you in Kerrang. We heard about you in England." But it was a very long struggle. But you keep building off a little bit of success, a little bit of ground you're taking, and until you finally get to where you need to go. And it's not an insurmountable obstacle, for a band, for an artist, or for a party to make a change where they where they live. Against all odds.
Every rung in the ladder matters. I want to thank you both for being on. D, love you, brother. Thank you for being there live from the American Psycho apartment. I appreciate that. Thanks for repainting, covering the blood on the walls. And Richard, thanks so much for being with us. It was nice to get to hook you guys up. I look forward to you guys, him being on your podcast and that conversation. We'll make it happen. Johnny Million, love you, man. It's nice to share the show with you on days like this, especially. It's crazy. Thanks everybody for listening. Stay tuned for Dick K, and we'll do a little bit of a post show after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll see you next weekend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, D.
Hey, Richard. Thanks, brother. Nice to meet you. Look forward to
guys, thanks so much. Just amazing, and I appreciate it so much, and I'm glad you guys could get hooked up. And like I said, I genuinely look forward to the conversation you're going to be having on your show. Are you typing, Johnny?
Nope. Get it set up, man. This is awesome. Thanks, Hal.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
I'm sorry God, there's so much information going by in the chat area.
Yeah.
And I can't read it. Occasionally, is that my name there or something? I think it says.
Yeah.
So, I wish we could interact, but I can't. But Hal, brother, we'll always be brothers. It's been
always.
Time since D. Snyder Radio in Connecticut, 20 years.
I know, man. I know. It's an honor to be on there when you're and on Sirius and the like. It was just awesome. So I look forward to doing it again, and we'll share a stage again very soon in the new future. It's gonna happen.
You know where I am. So
man, I do.
Johnny, I'll look forward to hearing your stuff, brother.
Thanks, D. It's an honor.
Thanks so much, brother. Okay, cheers.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks. Awesome. Just awesome. Just so much awesome. Just a whole lot of awesome.